Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to see you all. Thank you, Heather, for introducing us. It really is such a pleasure to be back in this space with these incredible guests and with you, our beloved audience, for the start of our 24-25 Tarragon Talks. And also, you're in for such a delightful, ghoulish treat today, seeing Goblin
I know, you can't.
It's the superstitious in me.
I'll say it.
Goblin Mackers. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm so honored to be joined with two incredible artists, improvisers, artistic leaders, educators, just incredible folks. I have their bios printed out because they have so much incredible accomplishments that I want to share, and I'll do my best to honor everything they've achieved. Herbie is someone that I love. I'm so honored to call him a friend, and also somebody who's a collaborator on my playwriting over at Young People's Theatre. Herbie has over a 35-year span of history in his career across North America as a director, performer, playwright, and currently as the artistic director at Young People's Theatre, just down by Front Street. Incredible theatre company. And Herbie has a John Hirsch directing prize for his directing that I just said, and you will have noticed some of his incredible moments on stage as, say, Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit, in which one of the interviews that I read of you, you put a really beautiful story of a 4-year-old yelling at you to get back on stage to find your friends on a mountain or something like that?
Yeah. Do you want, I can go quick into that story. We did it in the round like this. So we did it in the round, so we passed through the middle of the audience. And there's a moment while we're passing through, and I get past the Gollum scene, and I'm now standing here, and all the kids and the parents are on the floor sitting there. And I'm standing there, and I go, I must be on the other side of the Misty Mountains. What did I just throw down? Oh, it was you.
No, that was mine. You're good.
It was a gunshot. And I must be on the other side of the Misty Mountains, but where are my friends? They must still be in the mountains. Must I go back and see them? And there was this little girl standing there in her parents' arms, and she goes, "You get back there, mister!" And the audience did that, right? Like the whole audience went like that, and I looked at her and I went, just listen. That's it. And I think that leads to the theater.
Yes, exactly.
Theater must be live.
Totally. Just before we started, this is another little tangent, but Herbie dropped this beautiful nugget that I wanted to share with you all. He was like, theater must be live. And it's so obvious, and we're all here to see live theater. But it is such a beautiful thing as we think about playwriting and improv and all the incredible work that we see and try to develop here at Tarragon. But it has to be live, and it has to be with our audiences. But I totally went on a tangent. Herbie was also part of an incredible generation of Indigenous artists in the 80s that opened up such trajectories for so many diasporas and communities in professional theater and beyond. He's currently developing a number of plays for TYA and also mature audiences. And so thank you for joining us, Herbie. And Ken Hall, who I'm delighted to introduce as well. Ken Hall is and I fact-checked this before this talk, literally countless Canadian Comedy Award nominations, including a win as Breakout Artist of the Year, and as both an individual artist and also as part of their duo with their close collaborator, Isaac Kessler. Ken has also been on multiple TV shows, like the incredible Umbrella Academy, also The People of Earth, where you play Jeff, the alien.
The Gray, that's
Jeff
right.
The Gray.
The iconic, big-headed gray, black eye alien, 2-hour prosthetic build every day on set. Yeah.
I'm so curious to ask about that in relation to some Goblin here. And most recently, Ken was awarded the Frank McAnulty Award for Faculty Instructor of the Year at Second City.
And look at you.
Sit down. It's all right, everyone.
So both of our artists today are incredibly generous performers, creators, and also educators. And so today, we're really excited because Goblin Macbeth was developed through multiple incredible intersections of comedy, mask work, and improvisation. And so for these Tarragon Talks, I always love to do a deep dive on our guests. And I was so overjoyed to read a similarity between both these artists in how improv served as such a catalyst for how they began their careers. So I wanted to ask, and in a short, brief time, a sort of synopsis of how did improv launch you into exploring theater and or performance as your careers?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah,
I'll
go for
start.
it.
I'll try and go as quickly as possible. So what happened was, I always wanted to be an actor. I knew I wanted to be an actor, and I went to a high school in North York. I grew up in the Jane and Finch area, and I went to a high school up there. And the program was broken down into 4 years. It was mime the first year, improv the second year, scene study the third year, and history the fourth year. And I did the 4-year program in 2 years. But in the first year, in the improv class, my improv teacher said that there's this free class that happens down at Harborfront in a place called Theater Sports. And they do free classes on Tuesday. You guys should go down and take this class. And I would need something for my resume. If Steven Spielberg's going to find me, I should have something on there.
Theater sports.
Theater sports. That's what they're always looking for. But I went down because it was a free class. I mean, I grew up extremely poor. So I went down to this class, and 12 of us went down from this class. And then the next week, 3 of us went down. And then the week after, 1 of us went down. And I kept going down to make sure I got something on my resume. And then after about 6 weeks, I went, well, if I'm going to be the star of this show, because I'm hilarious, I should now, but I should go and see this show. And so I went and saw the show, and on the stage was a troupe called Dr. Jekyll and Naugahyde. And the name's great, but the troupe was hilarious, and it was made up of Neil Crone, Paul De La Rosa, Paul Bernardo, not the Paul Bernardo, but a Paul Bernardo, Maggie Matulik, and Moira Dunphy. And they were doing these incredible stories, scenes that were unbelievable. And I went, oh my Lord, if they're not famous, I'm in trouble. And so I really took it seriously after that, and I started really taking classes and studying improv, and I had some incredible teachers that were just, and you'll comment the same way, is that the improv teachers are so gracious with their time. One of the great things about improv is that we need each other on stage. It's different than stand-up. Stand-up comics sit back and they go, that guy's an idiot. Right? In improv, they go, I need you, so I'm going to be nice to you. Come on in. It's a big, loving circle. So great teachers, and I sort of studied that, and then they were going, I'm going to be taking this clown class. And I'm taking the clown class. Okay, I'm taking the voice class. So I took all of these classes while I was still in high school. My third year of high school, I started teaching the improv class and the mime class because I had been studying mime, and I studied improv, and I studied voice, and the teacher went, you know more than I do about this. Can you teach it? And I'd get my English credits teaching mime and improv. It can be done. Because I was horrible in English. So it sort of spiraled from there, and then you gain that confidence in that, and that sort of sparked everything. And then Second City, I taught at Second City for a chunk of time, and that's how it sort of started. And then when I go into auditions, because I have the improv background, it's like, whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. Okay, I know, all of that.
Yeah.
Your turn.
All right, thank you. For me, my journey was a bit different in the sense that I came to theater and acting later in life when I was about 30. And I didn't really know. It makes sense now. I'm 50 now. And looking back, I'm like, oh, this all makes sense. But I didn't know, I didn't really know who I was when I was in my late 20s. I grew up, I'm a small person, I'm 4'8", I have major scoliosis.
What?
Sorry to shock you on that one. Sit down, everyone, sit down. I grew up with the sense that I didn't fit into the world. And so I hid in a lot of ways. And in my early teens, I found punk rock music and the scene here in Toronto. And all of my friends in high school, I grew up in North Toronto, all my friends were kind of on the fringes anyway, like the outcasts. No, they didn't fit in too. And so I felt like I found my tribe in that sense, in the music of the defiance of punk and saying no. And for me, I felt like that was a good fuel for me to survive those years. And that was really my only frame of reference. And to get through those really tough teen years and subsequently my 20s and such was just to get through it, just to survive. So I wasn't thinking about, more creative pursuits. It was just get by. The creative outlet that I guess I did have was I played in the punk band when I was in my 20s for about 6 years. And when you play drums in a punk band, you don't really acquire a lot of marketable job skills. So I was chronically employed in my 20s. And I had a lot of anxiety and I had a lot of depression in my teens, and more so in my 20s is when things came up. And it was in my late 20s when things in life, as much as you can resist change happens. And that was a hard thing for me to accept back then. And when I was about 28 or so, I made a big decision that really facilitated all the changes in my life, and that was to quit drinking. And so I did that, but I had no idea who I was, because my whole world was wrapped up in this scene. So I started volunteering. I volunteered at Youth Shelter in Scarborough. That was still a bit frontline. I ended up working at HMV, the big superstore at Yonge and Dundas, which is now like a dispensary for marijuana, which like every second store in Toronto is. It feels like, but I realized I'm still unhappy, I'm still unsatisfied. So there's a big chunk that was missing. And sort of around that time, I started taking creative writing night school classes. And for the first time in my life, and this is kind of ironic too, that the class that I was selecting to go back into school was at the same high school that I went to, Northern Secondary, which is the second biggest school in Toronto. And it was in the very same classroom where I had my English class, my grade 10 and my OEC class when we still had OEC. And I'm like, this is ironic. Things have changed. So as an adult, I was trying to figure out where I fit in. And I loved writing the process and doing short stories and things like that. And I, as I said, I did it for about 2 years, but I was like, I feel like I need a change. And I was going through the course calendar and I landed on the theater page. And I saw the Harlequin mask, the happy face and the sad face, and I saw beginner's drama, and I got really scared because I wanted to sign up for it. And I started signing up for it. I'm like, what are you doing? This is not you. But I was like an out-of-body experience, you know what I mean? But in that moment, I can still see that moment. It felt like this is going to work. And I didn't even really know what that meant. But it was the beginning, as my mom describes it to me, as the making of me, was to find this world of creation and connection where, as Herbie was saying, in improv, we say yes and you have an offer, I accept that offer, I celebrate that offer, and I build off of that. So for me, it was this process of stepping into a classroom of strangers, instead of feeling like I'm going to be bullied or have to put my defenses up. If anything, it was to reduce them. And I realized as well, I'm like, I haven't laughed like this since I was a kid. And I realized of how much of a big missing piece of my life, like the missing piece of the puzzle that I was finding. And that was like 20 years ago, and I just never stopped. And one of the guys in my drama class was like, hey, you're pretty good, you should go to Second City. And I'm like, let's slow down. I'm just trying to find my footing here. But I realized too, I'm like, this is a bit of medicine for me. The idea of laughing and reconnecting with a younger part of myself that didn't really have the opportunity to play and to let all of my personality out. I felt like I had to put some armor up. And so for me, it was really connecting with the younger part of myself and shifting my mindset from that punk mentality and that defiance of saying no and being kind of closed off to ideas. And for me, it was shifting into saying yes. And that became the default in my life. And so I just started to say yes all the time. Because I jump into an improv scene, I say yes, and I'm like, that scene went pretty good. And then I started to say, I found out that I started saying yes. It started to show up more in my day-to-day life, and I'm like, I feel happier. And so I'm like, oh, I've been doing life all wrong. I see. Because I've been saying no to everything. And so improv for me was that idea of shifting a mindset and also tapping into other facets of my personality. And there's been a real catharsis from that. For me, I feel like play is so important. And we, as you mentioned, Jeff, of to be in a space with other people. There's an energy here, you know, and for me, I the idea of just saying yes, the repetition of saying yes, more and more opportunities come from that. And that's how I found doing like film and TV. You just keep saying yes to things, and it's such a lovely community of very non-judgmental people. And I kind of wish more of the world would take on more of that improv mindset. So that's how I got started in my journey of improv.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you both. Something that's so beautiful that I want to hold is this permission to play that you're both articulating. When we think of plays at the Tarragon, there's so many processes that we go through on writing a play. And oftentimes we have this idea of a playwright in an office, secluded from the rest of the world, on their typewriter or their pen and paper, just going about putting their world onto the page. And I'm curious for you both, since you're also both creators and writers, how does improv and this spirit of play come into your own creations? How does that infuse your playwriting or your own creative creations? Yeah.
One of the things that we exist with this committee that sits on our shoulder that tells us, you know, don't do that. They're going to laugh at you. Don't do that. They're going to tease you about that, or they're going to think you're stupid if you do that. And what I think improv does is that throws that committee off your shoulder. It completely gets rid of that that committee that we're educated up to become. We do that. You know, sit up straight, cross your legs, do that. A woman doesn't do that. A man doesn't do that. The rules of the game are this. If you want a good job, you have to go to this. You have to do that in college. Blah, blah, blah. All of these different rules that we have, that we set up for ourselves, is this committee that sits on our shoulder. So when we throw that committee off our shoulder, the possibilities are endless. Now, I'll tell you something. I'm developing a play right now with a writer who we walked through and we went, he hasn't been writing. We're opening the show in April.
Oh.
So, I said, just write. And there's a number of things. Oh, the community, I've been talking to the community, and what if and I'm going to offend, and I'm going to do, and I went, just write it. Get it out on page. And I tell writers, the first draft is for you. Sit down, write it down, throw the words up on the page so that you're covering the page with words. Misspell things, don't worry about spelling, just write. And when you get those pages, then we can build from that. Now, the second draft is for the actors so that they understand it, right? Take the time for the actors and they go, I don't know why my character opens that door. Let's find out why the character opens the door. Right, that's why. Okay, great. Now that's going to influence what goes on in the next scene, right? So now the actors understand it and they can translate it onto, and then the third draft, and usually there's about, 8 or 9 drafts, or 10 drafts or 15 drafts, but by the third draft, you're writing for the audience. Will the audience enjoy this? Is it funny? Is it charming? Is it edgy? Do I set off those emotions? That's where you get into and so often we're thinking third draft already and we're going, what are they going to think about this play? No. First draft, for yourself. This is what I want to say about the play. Second draft, do you understand how to play this role? Third draft, are they going to like it? Right? So that's where that improv comes in, where I can throw the audience, that committee off of my shoulder, and now I can develop. Same with acting, right? When I direct, I do the same thing. I go, try something. Get up there and what? And when I've worked with actors for a long time, I can say, that was stupid. Try something else. And they know it's not. They know it's not it's that. Or I also say a lot, that's a dumb director note. Don't worry about that. That was just dumb. Do something else. And they know to play. So we get to play with each other. And it's never like on judgment. It's just like, okay, that's a bad choice. Move on. And then in the rehearsal process, you get to play, and that play is really important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How I started and how I often devise work, me and my comedy partner, I play in a duo. We started out doing sketch, but we weren't really good writers. And so we did a show called Two Man No Show. And it was part of the Toronto Fringe Festival back in 2009. And we didn't have a show, so we thought it'd be good to put it in the name, Two Men No Show. So if we don't show up, people are like, oh yeah, I get it. and it was, we had just gotten out of the Second City Conservatory program. We'd been learning how to write sketch comedy and such. So our idea, and this is the first time that we worked together as a duo, and we're still pretty green within that. So we didn't have a show a month out, and so we just tried to put as much as we could. Not a good place to be. It's very stressful. And we had a sketch show, but what we discovered in the performance of it was that a lot of our jokes that we had written didn't work for the audience that was in front of you, and that didn't feel good. And so we didn't like to admit defeat within that. So we would say another joke in that moment for that audience, and we'd get a laugh, and we're like, oh, cool. So we had a structure of a show, and we would sort of tailor it for each and every audience. And I remember my parents came out to see it a few times over the course of the 8 shows that we did, and my mom was saying it's a very scary show. And there was physicality. We reenacted the Dirty Dancing, Patrick Swayze with the lift. I was in a nice little pink dress that my mom actually sewed. And a far cry from my punk days, actually, when you think about it. But she was saying it was a dangerous show because each time she saw it, it was going to be a bit different every single time because we would adapt for the audience that was there. And so we started getting tagged as very vaudevillian. Isaac, he's a much bigger guy. I'm a small guy. And we were very physical. And we had a lot of that play within that. Because if our jokes aren't working for the audience, we got to drop our jokes. We have to find out what works for you. And so that was in the nucleus of the DNA of the Two Man No Show stuff. And so we started playing festivals and things like that. So for me, it's always been like, I want to, in a weird way, I'm letting the audience direct our play because I'm listening to what's working for you. And if I hear reactions, I hear laughter, then I'm like, oh, they like that? Great, I'm going to redo that. They're telling me they want more of that. And so rather than going on to the next idea, to the next beat, or adding more exposition, let's just stay here. Let's just play this one idea out. Yeah. We didn't really know that at the time, but it's a very important part of theatrical clowning. And so that was something that we got inspired with, and we've gotten tagged with this label being Clown Prov. Mm-hmm. So it's like clown-inspired improv. And that's become our preferred style of play. And for me, there's a real liberation, there's a real freedom in that. There's often when I've been doing like narrative, and some people are really good at narrative and things like that. And for me, I'm like, I just want to play. I just want to have the most fun and want the audience to have the most fun too. So I think like Mr. Bean, for example, the world over, he's playing games the whole time. And you understand the games, And for me, I feel like audiences are very satiated when they just see two people genuinely in the state of play, genuinely enjoying the company of each other and trying to really connect and see the audience and try to build the play. So just that we're on a stage doesn't mean that you're not part of it. For us, it's like you're now in the space. So you are a part of it. And so that's how we try it. For me, I'm like, I would love to, I like building shows where I have ideas. I don't write a script down. I just have ideas of like, oh, maybe I'll play this game and then I'll transition to play this game. And if this game isn't working, then I'm going to quickly go to this game. So for me, I feel like there's a real freedom in actually having a minimal script. And it's a bit of a dangerous thing to do that. But I've been doing improv for 20 years. I don't even know how many office scenes I've done or how many like breakfast scenes I've done. I want to do something different. I want to do something in a weird way. I kind of trace it back to my punk days of like, let's break some rules, but let's not hurt anything in the process, right? Like we're not going to smash anything, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I want to subvert the expectations. And for me, that's really fun, and there's real joyfulness, and it doesn't always work. There's many shows that me and Isaac have done where you get the audience, you may not win over everyone, but the invitation is there to join in our play. Within that. So for me, that's always been the fuel of our engine is let's play with the audience. Let's bring the audience into the experience of that and to have that versatility to adapt it each and every time to take the temperature of the room and to try to give the audience what they want. The audience, in a weird way, are the directors.
Yeah. I was at that show, by the way.
I saw you with your arms crossed. The first two-man show.
The first two-man show. I was at that. That was at like the at the U of T.
Helen Gardner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
That was so cool.
remember that.
And funny too, like when I was a student of improv, like early on in my days, I would go to, there was a great improv show in Toronto called Catch 23, and I'd go see this guy. And we didn't even know each other, like, but I was like, this guy's amazing. like, and I'm very grateful to now know Herbie, you know, as a friend, and we get to, you know, play and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lovely community. Yeah.
Thank you. Like today, there's multiple layers in performance happening all at once. You're talking so well about the adaptation to an audience, audience as director, that's such an interesting concept. And in Goblin Macbeth, something that's also interesting is that they're also adapting Shakespeare. And this is something that I wanted to talk to you both about because you also both created, really, an adaptation of Snow White, a two-hander version of Snow White, where you both played 14 characters, was it?
It was 15. I think it was
15 characters. And they
Countless characters.
I'll just say 18. Why not? Let's say 18.
So I was curious about that in terms of this Snow White, sort of like what our folks are going to see with Macbeth today. How did you come to adapt this concept of a two-hander into a well-known story such as Snow White?
Again?
And then play it.
You asked me.
It's true. It's very true. So what happened when we found this script, this two-hander out of Seattle? As artistic director, I read about 120 scripts a year that I go through. Yes, a lot. Basically, what happened was this script came up, and as I was reading it, it's this great piece that really takes Snow White in another direction. She doesn't run off with the prince. She actually sticks around with the seven dwarfs. But this is a point where they're about to tell the story to the audience, the two of them, and only one of the dwarfs has shown up. So I mean, so we got to tell this story. So let's just recreate it. Let's do this. So number 4 plays most of the other roles. So Snow White plays, but they switch it off back and forth. And I'll say, when I read the script and we were talking about doing it, I went, if I can get this performer into the show, then we can do this show. But if we don't, it's going to be really hard. And I don't know if we should do it, because it needs to have somebody with a certain voice. And I contacted Ken, because that's the voice. When I read it, I started going, oh, that's the voice. This is now. So I heard it in Ken's voice. And I called him up and I said, I just sent you a script. Can you read it and let me know? And you were in Jamaica. And he went, well, I'm in Jamaica. Give me a week. But you contacted me back. I think you read it in Jamaica, did you not?
Yeah.
Read it in Jamaica and called me back and said, yeah, I'm in. So it was like, it was really cool. And I think that was, I think it's fun. It gave a different voice. It gave a real, you get to see the story told in a really fun way. And what I'll say is that the audience, because it's all young people, they were totally engaged. And there's moments where it's like, oh, you're here. Oh, let's get started. Well, that gives them permission to scream back at you. So there were times where they were like, she's over there! She's over there! And so 100% we're getting washed in this audience that wants to be part of the show, and it's live theater, so it's not sitting back in the chair. Like I always try and sell the corner of the chair rather than the whole chair. You pay for the whole chair, but I want the audience on the corner.
That's great.
And so they were that, and they directed the show, as you were saying. Like they led it to the way you wanted, and you got to play with them.
Yeah, kids are very honest. If they're not digging a moment, they're going to check out. And if they are, they're going to start singing impromptu and start getting up and dancing. It was, it was a wild experience to do that show. It was the hardest show I've ever done. It was such a physical show.
Right.
Because the two-hander of doing Snow White, we were playing 15 characters, and there was 2 casts because we were still COVID times. So it was Herbie and JD and myself and Amanda Cordner. And for me, one of the things that was really exciting about jumping into a script like that was that, again, it's like you're going to play all the characters. And how do you transition out? How do you play 15 characters in 85 minutes and no downtime? Like, it was a real challenge, and that was a very exciting thing to do. And just as the show, the Goblin M, we'll say, like, how do you change your physicality? How can you adjust your costume or the hat that number 4 dwarf was wearing to become different characters? How can you put on something and believably transition into a new character within that? So for me, it was the real challenge of being able to tackle a show like that. And Amanda, my Snow White that I was playing off with, she described it best as like it's like an Olympic sport, you know. And I gotta say too, Amanda is a lot younger than me as well, so I was like trying to keep up with her. But it was just so great. It really is kind of like an actor's ideal dream job, because it asks so much of you, because it's for children as well. So the pace, I think, has to be pretty quick, and you got to bring a ton of energy to it. There's tons of physicality, and for me, even though I'm an improviser, I've really come to see over the last many years as the physicality. I want to get into my body rather than just trying to have clever references, which I think in more of a North American improv context, it's really about, quick references and being quick-witted, which again is great. But for me, I really love the physicality of letting that really inform the play. So yeah, it was an amazing, and we got, both myself and Amanda got nominated for Doras for outstanding individual performers. So
I did not.
You got, YPT got nominated.
Oh yeah, YPT as a collective. That's a good point. But you got nominated, and I called you up and I gave you shit for it.
I shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This is really important. Is that we said the exact same words, right? Because it's scripted. But two totally different characters. Totally different. Totally different. And that was wonderful, because we had to we couldn't rehearse together, so it wasn't like, I'm stealing that bit.
Right.
We were at separate times, so that if one of us got sick, the other one can go in. It wasn't even like if Ken got sick, I can go in. No, if somebody in that cast was sick, we had to do the show.
Yeah.
So we weren't passing back and forth. I was always with JD. You were always with Amanda. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the safety. But it's really interesting, as we're talking about mask, how we used our mask. Yeah. You used the hat a lot more than I did.
Yeah, that's right.
And I used accents, and I used physicality. So all 7 of the dwarfs, and I can't even go through it, but I had like a Scottish guy who's like, all right, here we go, and then I had like a Matthew McConaughey who's sort of like, everything's okay. It's like, everybody take off your shirts, we're gonna relax a little bit. So I had all these different characters, but for me it was physically like finding it in the body, right? Mm-hmm. And you were like really adapted the hat, and they love that. Yeah. That bit with the hat.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so those were our masks. Those become the mask that the character can play.
Yeah, for sure. Costumes is often such a premise of mask, but then there's of course what you're going to see today is incredible mask work and literal goblin masks or elf masks. Actually, that's a different story. But Herbie,
yes,
I know that you brought some masks.
I
with
did.
You today.
I brought a couple of masks. If you wanted, so for me, when I started to get into improvisation, one of the big things, and this sort of dictates how I work as well. So I'll do this one secondly, but I'll do these guys first. When you get into improv, you sort of have to lead yourself back to old Italian comedy, which is commedia dell'arte. And in commedia dell'arte, what happens is, because the characters are so important that they drive the story, is that you would take on a character and you'd play it your entire lifetime. So you could start out as a 23-year-old Arlecchino and finish off as a 75-year-old Arlecchino. Okay, here I am, I'm Arlecchino. You know, so you play that kind of thing. And you may inherit that role from your father, right? Or your grandfather. You may be going, he's part of the family tradition, I have to be an Arlecchino. Okay, whatever. I years ago in '93, I directed Servant of Two Masters, and then since then I've written The Marriage of Two Masters and Speak Easy or Else, which was a First Nations adaptation that takes place that we did with the Center for Indigenous Theatre. But then I created, I built these masks so you could see, like, there's an Arlecchino mask, and it's made J-cloth and celastic and leather.
Oh, wow.
So this is like there. You can take a look at that one. So the Arlecchino, and this is an Il Dottore mask. And one of the things, because I was like making these a lot, I was sort of like doing that Il Dottore. I had the whole collection of the characters, and one night what used to happen is we used to play poker at Second City. It's notorious. This poker game went on for years and years. I don't think it's still going on, but Friday nights you'd gather there. There's, John Candy used to sign over checks and just leave them on the wall. One night I came in with the suitcase full of the characters. And just before we started the poker game, we sort of did the thing where it was like, and opened them up, and the Second City guys went, could we, do you mind if we, and they threw it on, and they, okay, and they started doing bits on the stage, and they were like pulling out all this sort of lovely sort of, for about 20 minutes they were doing turns. They were doing commedia turns in the mask, and then it was like they sat down and took off the mask and they put them all away, and we started the thing, and then it was like, it happened.
Wow.
For a theater. Is this a theater?
Downstairs.
Sunlight for a theater. Is this a theater or not? Is this a two-way communication here?
The theater's downstairs. It's downstairs.
Whatever important stuff you're doing.
Wow.
That was true spirit of improv.
Wow.
Absolutely. Thank you for showing the mask. I was going to share them around the space as well to take a look.
Oh, no.
I would
By all
hope.
means, you touch them. They're meant to be, but in that commedia dell'arte sense,
What did you put it on?
I could. Okay, here. Why don't you could pass that one around. One has straps. You could see how much they've been used, but the straps are now. They were elastic, but at one point they're stretched straight out. But the beauty of what commedia dell'arte is that the actors are in charge, and when I direct in that same way. I'm not doing a puppet show as a director. I don't go, move over 3 steps, say the line like that, turn around and then leave. I go, why are you doing that? And then if they can justify it, that's where it lives in that. So this is El Capitan, who is a proud man. El Capitan is a proud man. And so he's bravado. This is who this is. Hello, how are you? It's great to be here. No fear whatsoever. We can attack or we can surrender. Oh, you look lovely. How are you? The outfit, it suits you. Are you ready? We are going forward. Thank you. So with the masks, it's you hide the reveal, but it's sort of the in that sense. Again, it's very much an improv game where you play with each other and you go, okay. They were never scripted. In fact, Gildoni, who was the gentleman who scripted those, they'd say he either saved Commedia dell'arte or destroyed Commedia dell'arte because of writing it down changes the whole thing of it, because now it's almost encased and laud. But those stories were passed down. And then I would do a class like that, and I did a Commedia class where I went, now let's talk about the modern sitcom. And at that time, Cheers was on, and I broke down Cheers into the characters. And if you look at Cheers, you can break them all down. Carla is the Brighella character, who's the big, rough and tumble sort of thing. And then you could go, Ted Danson is the Arlecchino, the sort of like taking care of everybody, the servant. And then you have El Capitan is Cliff in the uniform, right? He's a braggart. And those sort of things, you start to recognize that we know these rules and we live by these rules so much that that's how we develop our plays and our comedies. So.
Yeah, like they're very recognizable archetypes.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating how it's been around for so long, so many years, and yet those archetypes have remained consistent. Even in The Simpsons, like Mr. Burns, and Homer, like their physicality is exactly like Commedia in so many ways. It's wild.
Thank you, Herbie. Thank you, Ken. I wanted to make sure that now we have space for our folks to grab a drink, do what you need to do, and then please head downstairs to see our incredible Goblin Macbeth. Please join me in thanking our
So this is Priscilla Costello, who was my grade 11 theater teacher, and she is the one who, this is so funny because I tell this story often, she's the one that sent me down to theater sports that first time, that got me into theater in a major way, and I'll add this as well. She took me down to see Dry Lips Autumn Kapuskasing, which got me into mainstream theater, and I did the play at the Royal Alex 2 years later. But if I hadn't have gone down to there, I would have dropped off my resume at the Bajamajig Theater, which is where I met Larry Lewis, who became my mentor, who spiraled me into doing theater.
Well, I brought him in a few things because he's right. I really didn't know what I was doing, and he actually taught some of the grade 11 class, which was wonderful for me.
Yes, there was a good group of people that came out of that was so,
It really was, and you were great. He really was so talented, even at a grade 11 level. He knew what he was doing.
You know
it's
what?
Wonderful to see his success.
Mark Morgenstern.
Oh my gosh!
So Mark directed commercials for the Super Bowl. He was living in LA, and now he's down in Nova Scotia. So this is like a major thank you for who I am today. This lady right here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But a lot of his success and a lot of what he's achieved is because he was so talented and so hardworking. He really made the best and the most of every talent he had and every opportunity.
I had nothing else to fall back on.